For over 25 years after the fall of the Third Reich, Paul Hermann Feustel, an SS officer responsible for the brutal suppression of resistance fighters in Czechoslovakia, walked free. He had evaded justice, blending back into civilian life in post-war Germany. But the dead don't forget. And neither do the survivors. In 1971, in the heart of East Germany, a ghost from the SS was finally unmasked. The arrest shocked a generation that had tried to move on. Feustel was not a relic of a distant war. He was living proof that some horrors had simply changed clothes and waited. The rise of a bureaucratic killer. Born in 1903 in Saxony, Feustel came of age during the political chaos of post-World War I Germany. He was not a decorated war hero or a famous ideologue. His power came from loyalty and silence. A civil servant who climbed through the ranks, he joined the Nazi Party in its early days and quickly aligned with the SS. Feustel's early career wasn't dramatic. He served in local police units and administrative posts. But his commitment to National Socialist ideology and his efficient, methodical nature made him an ideal tool for the SS. By the late 1930s, he had secured a position within the Gestapo, where his work turned darker. He was transferred to the Protectorate of Bohemia and Moravia, modern-day Czech Republic, where Nazi occupation was met with fierce resistance. And that's where Feustel made his mark. Not as a soldier on the battlefield, but as a ruthless enforcer behind closed doors. His mission: crush dissent by any means necessary. He led raids against resistance cells, coordinated mass arrests, and signed off on executions, often without trial. Villages suspected of hiding partisans were burned. Civilians were tortured for information. Every action had paperwork. Every execution had a form. And Feustel signed them all. His work earned him promotions. Not for bravery, but for cold efficiency. He wasn't the face of terror, but he was the one who kept the machinery running smoothly, silently. And when the war ended in 1945, he simply disappeared into the fog of defeat, until history came knocking. When Nazi Germany collapsed in 1945, chaos reigned. Soldiers fled. Camps were abandoned. Files were burned. And into that chaos, Paul Hermann Feustel disappeared, not into some distant jungle or South American refuge, but into the very heart of the new German states. Feustel fled west, shaving off his SS past like an old uniform. He adopted a civilian name and returned to the east under the radar. While many former Nazis feared Allied tribunals, Feustel counted on the fog of war and the mass confusion that followed. And it worked, for a time. In the new East German state, known as the GDR, officials were busy building socialism and cleaning the slate. But Feustel knew how to move quietly. He lived under his real name for a while, even holding administrative jobs. He was invisible because no one was looking. At least, not yet. For over 2 decades, he lived like a normal citizen. But history has a long memory. In 1971, a Czech War Crimes Commission unearthed long-buried documents bearing Feustel's name. Survivors still alive remembered his face. Testimonies reached East German authorities. And finally, after 26 years of silence, Paul Hermann Feustel was arrested in the small town of Gera, where he had been hiding in plain sight all along. In 1971, news of Feustel's arrest shocked East Germany. For over 2 decades, he had lived a quiet civilian life, hiding in plain sight. Neighbors described him as a polite, elderly man. Few had any idea that he once led brutal crackdowns in occupied Czechoslovakia. His calm demeanor masked a chilling past. The Stasi took him into custody, and what followed was a meticulous investigation. Eyewitnesses emerged, documents surfaced, signed orders, records of executions, and testimonies from survivors who remembered his face and his orders. Feustel denied everything at first, but the mountain of evidence slowly boxed him in. His arrest became a symbol. East Germany had prided itself on being anti-fascist, yet here was a former SS officer, living within its borders for years. The public outcry was immense. The government wanted justice, not just for the crimes, but for the stain of having harbored him for so long. Feustel's trial opened in Gera in 1973. He appeared older, thinner, yet still emotionless. He claimed he was simply following orders. But the prosecution brought overwhelming evidence: signed documents, survivor testimonies, and a letter in Feustel's own handwriting advocating for any means necessary against partisans. Witnesses described public executions, mass arrests, and Feustel's cold supervision. One survivor spoke of torture sessions where Feustel stood silently in the doorway. Another recounted entire families disappearing after his raids. These weren't isolated acts, they were patterns of systemic brutality, and Feustel was at their core. On June 18, 1973, the court sentenced him to death by firing squad. The message was clear: no time, no disguise, and no civilian life could wash away the crimes of the past. Feustel had escaped judgment for decades, but history had finally caught up.